I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show.
Hi, y'all. You can tell I've lived in Texas now for 3.5 years, right, y'all? Thank you for coming back. Today's going to be a little different. I am going to share one of my Why Not Now ideas, actually kind of two. And it's going to be a journey, so stick with me. Progress is not linear, right? But we will go up and to the right. And I'm a little nervous, so got my sweaty palms. Renegade rule number 4, hyper aware of my mental, physical, emotional state. So as I go through my Why Not Nows, I'm going to share also the 5 Renegade rules that I teach to unlock and help people manufacture bravery. I use these daily, personally, professionally. You'll see. Like, literally, they're ingrained into every aspect of my life. I don't even think about it anymore. But hopefully they can help you. So keep a Why Not Now idea in mind, something that you've been thinking about doing. It's so fun to do both personally and professionally. They may mix. And it could be something that you have been thinking about stopping, right? Why not now stop something and create more time and energy? Because yes is expensive. So, okay, speaking of, I wouldn't say stop, but let's use the word conversion. Little personal update here. And for those of you who have been following along since the early days, I would say, of when I started sharing kind of business life on social media, which was mid-2000s. We've been at it now, 15 plus years, or more, if I'm doing my math right, my ASU math. I have been sharing play-by-play almost, right? Not real time and not sharing open wounds, like letting those wounds heal into more valuable scars. And I think if you've been following, you probably have seen less of my marriage, like, a day to day. And Richard and I have converted our relationship, and we're no longer married. And this process started quite some time ago, and we have been extremely intentional with it. We've been surgical about it, taking our time first and foremost for our son Lincoln, and keeping him the as the the North Star here. But also we work together, daily, and it's been a beautiful process. It's also been extremely tough in moments, but as you would expect, it's been very non-traditional. And so, as we say, let's do this the Renegade way. It's not just me who uses this mentality and framework and playbook for life. It's the whole family. Like, Lincoln will rattle off some of these Renegade rules, and he's 5. And we talk, I focus on manufacturing bravery for a living and help people get down the black diamond mountains of life and business, literally. And so this has been one. It has taken some Jedi tricks and moves to be able to, and guides who can literally teach you. This is my second Star Wars reference in the last 2 episodes, and I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but I did watch a lot of Spaceballs when I was growing up in the trailer. I don't know. Maybe I've learned that way. But there have been Obi-Wan Kenobis, let's say, in plural, along the way guiding us. And so I share this because it's all related to what I'm talking about today. And Richard and I have gotten to a place, this has all been formalized, and we didn't want this relationship to stop in terms of the assets going to ground zero that we had built up, right? And so when I say converting, we've converted from a couple to co-piloting, right? He is my ride or die co-pilot, especially for Lincoln. And I know a lot of you joined this journey and started following and listening to the podcast when I had Lincoln, which was almost on an airplane, ended up having him on a layover at 27 weeks in a city that I didn't live in, and shared part of the journey when it was time and the lessons, because I believe we learn what we need to teach. And if you can help one person, why wouldn't you, right? So we've waited to get to at least a point where these aren't open wounds. These are more the scars that hopefully will lend value to others. But I don't even know if scars, like they're celebrations, really. And I'm not speaking out of turn when I share this, because Richard feels the same. And he's now produced, 323, 24 plus podcast episodes. So he's in this. He's always typically been behind the scenes, but we have talked about doing an episode just around this together. So we're really, really proud, very humbled by the lessons and by the journey. And we're proud, though, of how we've navigated and where we are. And there's no ta-da moment here. I listen to a lot of Glennon Doyle. So if you do as well, you'll always kind of hear her talk about people who they'll do something hard, and then they'll be at the end and they'll share as if it's happening now, but it's kind of a ta-da, ta-da, look at me, I figured it all out. That's not what we're trying to do here at all. But there are phases to this process, right? And I think that early on, and we're talking, this is kind of years in the making. So we have a guide in every pocket, guiding us down these black diamond mountains of life and business, and a different type of therapist in every pocket, a different type of guide. And we knew early on this was going to be unique, how we navigated this, both working together, both just our relationship. And I kind of looked at this along the way as okay, if you have, let's just a portfolio, or if you have an investment or equity in something, if you could retain and convert some of those assets into a different form and keep what's good and try and maybe shed the parts that didn't work, wouldn't you? Absolutely. And so that's been kind of the goal. There's so much that's good with Richard and I that we know we are a team. We can get through some hard shit, living in the NICU for 90 days and having a micro preemie and moving onto a boat because it's one of my random kind of renegade ideas, and learning to captain and moving into the forest and living in an RV and all that jazz. He would be reminding me through this process of my own renegade rules because he lives it too. And so I'm sharing this with you because I am extremely grateful for him, and the timing will be determined more by him, but he's willing to talk about it too and kind of share. But I know that there are different ways to approach things, and shaking shit up and mixing things that don't usually get mixed together for the sake of a positive disruption, impact versus destruction, is where I play, right? So that's what today's about. And it's all connected, but just stick with me on this journey because we're talking years in the making. And, Richard and I both realized we had been living out of integrity in a lot of ways for quite some time. And we both have superpowers, and we both know that a certain edge can be your strongest superpower and skill and secret weapon, or it can be your demise, and you decide how you're going to use it. But there came a point where we realized, okay, we really need to address where we are, and especially for the sake of Lincoln, think about his parents and how they're showing up, because healthy parents create healthy children. So we have one family, 2 homes, and we've converted our relationship formally and, officially and all that jazz, but into a different version. And that's a big thing that I've been navigating and haven't talked about, but I've had a lot of questions, as you can imagine. So there's that. And how does that relate to today? Well, it seems like, with one thing, it unlocks and opens up all these other things. So you start shifting or pushing on some aspect of your life, and it's all related, right? Work-life integration versus separation. So I look back, and it's funny how the universe is like giggling, kind of like, yeah, you just put this together, right? Or, your faith or your whatever you believe in. My soul, knowing a lot of shit before I ever did and trying to translate it to me and like tapping me on the shoulder nicely until finally it's like, hey, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to sit you down. And that life has definitely done that to me a few times. So we take things back, and a lot of this unlock and start came with me falling back in love with the things that I love and play. I feel like we have a play pandemic going on, and it's not just me. We have sacrificed what we love. And when I say we, I say I get out there, I travel, I see a lot of people, a lot of places, a lot of different, just very different audiences. And this is a thing. And so I want to take us back to, 2022, maybe the spring. And that's where we're going to get started. So my friend invited me to a baseball game, a sandlot baseball game. And I grew up with a lot of baseball in my life with my family. And I worked in the NBA and worked with all the professional sports leagues and stuff. But original love was definitely baseball. And yes, I can go into that in terms of like, we're talking home run derbies and stuff at the trailer park with the wiffle ball bat and all that jazz. Okay, so my friend invited me to this baseball game, and it's a sandlot baseball team league. I didn't know this was a thing, but this is kind of a revolution across the country. And in Texas, they have a few different teams. Her husband is the co-founder of the Moon Towers. And she said, do you want to come sometime? I'm like, yeah. So I rock up, and it's like Field of Dreams. It's called the Longtime. This was one of their baseball diamonds. And we've got these gentlemen who, they're well established in their careers. They're high octane. They're doing big things. They're corporate executives. They're founders and everything in between. And the two co-founders, they came together after 50 years. They were best friends growing up, played baseball together, and back together and decided, let's start our own team. So they've got all these guys, and they just go play for fun, right? You might see a guy drinking beer on third. You might see a guy running the bases in boots, in Tecovas boots. It is just for the love of the game, right? And so they're getting back together for the sake of camaraderie, not competition. Half the time they don't even keep score, I don't think, but there's these other teams they play. And sometimes there's like 3 generations on the team. So they've got several dad-son combos where you'll see, the son, he's pitching, and dad's playing catch, and it's just fun. Sometimes there's little DJs, and it's equal parts like Field of Dreams and Sandlot, the movie too, right? It's just so fun. Bring your lawn chair, snacks, whatever. And so my friend's husband, who is a co-founder, wrote a book. His name's Jim Matthews. It's called Shine the Light. So she asked me one day, hey, could Jim talk to you? He's going to write a book, and he has a manuscript. Would you be willing to read it and help him? And so this was 2022. I did. I couldn't put it down. I give him a little bit of advice. He's an incredible writer. He's an attorney now, but he used to be a sports journalist. Like, this guy has a story. Like, it's unbelievable. You got to get this book, by the way. Shine the Light by Jim Matthews. We'll put a link in the show notes. You can get it on Amazon. It's a really good gift, men and women. Okay, so I read it, and I'm like, man, these guys have just figured out how to play again. And there's this quote that I keep thinking of, and Jim's the one that told me originally. But I'm helping him read. I read the manuscript, couldn't put it down. A lot of times people say they're going to write a book. Very few actually do it. He did it. Incredible. But the quote is, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So true. So I saw these guys playing. Right around that time, I'm asked, will you do Dancing with the Stars? The charity version here in Austin. It's this huge fundraiser. It's for young kids who have been through, the beneficiary is a center where young kids can go as they're transitioning from very unfortunate situations into better situations. And I've just absolutely loved what they've been able to do. And a friend of mine had done Dancing with the Stars the year before, asked me to do it. I say yes, and I'm training. And I'm back to dance, right? And I hadn't danced in a long time. I grew up dancing, but it's like turning things on and light bulbs on, and I'm enjoying it so much. And so I start realizing, okay, I've really missed this. What else have I missed in my life? And you can just kind of get off course at times or put a hobby or a love of something to the side because you're so busy doing all the things and checking all the boxes and being the overcapacity and over-programmed humans that we are. And so it's like, oh, okay. Well, we start doing some tricks in the performance because I'm a renegade and I'm like, they put you with a pro for this Dancing with the Stars. It's very much like the show. There's like 1,500 people that you're preparing and training to go perform in front of. And they pick some like influencers in the city and they match you with a pro. And I'm like, hey, Travis, I want to do some flips in my dance. And he's like, great. Maybe you should first just learn the dance. And so I do. And he's like, then we'll talk about it. So we've got AC/DC. I'm an 80s and 90s gal. But we got some rock and roll going on. I learned the dance. I'm like, okay, time for tricks. We start doing some tricks, back flips. Like it is just on. And I fall in love with this process and this training. And for any renegade who's ever been through the accelerator or is a renegade like member, part of the curriculum starts off with something that feels extremely, I'd say almost like fluffy or Pollyanna, but I've proven this to myself to be true, this calculus, this kind of formula over and over. And that is, if you look at a Venn diagram and you arrive at like purpose, passion, and skill, the intersection, right? So where purpose, passion, and skill collide, bliss resides. There's a sweet spot in that intersection. That's where you want to live. It's a moving target. It's not easy. It's life work. But that's where impact, income, joy, ROI, like that's what you're uniquely qualified to do on this planet, right? And so you want to find that, and it's going to shift over time. Our skills change. We can add new ones. Purpose might ebb and flow, and then our passions, So you take 5 minutes for each bubble, each bucket, and you just brainstorm, brain dump, and don't overthink it, and then walk away. And you're like, I've got courses I'm an online analyst for XYZ company. That's a skill. And I've got my kids are my purpose, or I love animals. Did I already say animals? I think I'm a big animal person. So I put animals in both purpose and passion. Anyway, I digress. But dance was a big one. And then growing up, I did some gymnastics. Not a gymnast, like maybe a front walkover, back walkover was the most technical thing I ever did. I wanted to be Mary Lou Retton, but I never was. But I remember being in the trailer, 1980s, right? Watching her and just like, I want to do that, right? So I had this in me that was bubbling. And then I thought, okay, let's bring after Dancing with the Stars, which is the whole thing, the final flip, my wig, my hair gets caught in my partner's jacket and I couldn't get it out and my hair is stuck in front of all these 1,500 people. And we worked it out and then we did get to do our final trick as well. But that happened. And I was like, I'm dancing again. This is coming back. And you know what? Let's bring on more tricks. That's what launched me into wanting to do more acrobatics and flips and just getting more action and movement. And so that's kind of where this why not now idea of, okay, let's really take this up another level came into play. And the process started. And I'll work the 5 Renegade Rules against each step and how it kind of unfolded. And what I can tell you is along the way, there were moments where I'm like, I'm I'm navigating all these other black diamonds of my life, right? Like it's a big deal to convert your marriage. And we took our time, we were surgical for the greater good of Lincoln and also working together and not talk about combustion. Like it just was not, it was Jedi trick stuff. And we did it. However, there'd be moments where I would need to go train because I committed to doing this on stage in front of 9,000 people, which is a renegade rule of don't give yourself an out. And I was like, I can't make space for this. And it was like, no, you can't afford not to make space for this. And so you need to get really serious about what brings you joy. Because if you don't, those character flaws, that out of alignment or out of integrity is only going to continue, because that's how you get yourself into that mess. So here are the renegade rules and how things started. And I hope that you apply your own why not now idea to this process and these rules. But first, here are the 5 rules. And then we'll hop into the application. But I want to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with you real quick. Okay, to recap, renegade rule number 1, renegades identify the worst case scenario. They ask themselves, what if this idea doesn't work? Then what? Then what? Then what? Then what? Right? All the way from green lighting the idea to the worst case scenario. Renegade rule number 2, renegades put a mechanism in place and they don't give themselves an out, right? Don't give yourself an out. This is like if you want to take the island, you burn your boat. You can send a text to someone, you can schedule a meeting, buy the ticket, sign up for the marathon. Just committing to having a critical conversation that you know you need to have to go to that next step of your idea. That is renegade rule number 2. Renegade rule number 3, renegades leverage adversity. Adversity is just an asset in disguise. You have to leverage it. And it's a springboard. Huge, huge way to get momentum in that first best brave step that leads to a small win, but a meaningful big win in the grand scheme. Renegade rule number 4, renegades are hyper aware of their mental, physical, emotional state. And that means our self-talk, what's our mind saying? Doesn't mean it's true, but it's there. So it's data. Renegade, mental, physical, physiologically, what's happening. Our bodies know what's up quicker than our minds, right? So it's like, do you have goosebumps? Are your palms sweaty? Is your heart racing? Are you getting warm? All those things are very specific or very strategic to listen to. It's science. And then you can use that data to best inform the next best brave step. Renegade rule number 5, renegades have strong operating and belief systems that are in sync, right? Something bigger than yourself, mission, vision, operating, like governing principles of how you lead your life. And then your operating system is literally how are you navigating your day? Do you have a morning routine? What's your sleep protocol? How do you run your meetings? All those things. So we toggle back and forth, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. And that way we don't lose sight of the big picture, but we also have to execute if we're going to get shit done, right? So those are the 5 renegade rules. This has come from thousands and thousands of hours of conversations and a couple of decades of working with some of the most incredible minds on the planet across every category. Some are household names and A-list celebs. Some are people that you would have never heard of, but they've done the most incredible things. And everyone in between. So that's it. Those are the 5 renegade rules. Okay, quick time out here before we get to the next part. If you like what you're hearing, or if you are a fan of the show, obviously a rate, review, subscribe, all the things. We'd love for you to share this with your friends. We are on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on YouTube, and all the other places. If you want to stay in touch and get updates and insights via newsletter, would love for you to join. And you can go to amyjomartin.com. You can go to amyjomartin.com/newsletter to receive our updates. We have a book. I say we, I mean my team and I, because we work as a team, but it's called Renegades Write the Rules. It's a New York Times bestseller. That's what the jetpack is. It's actually on the cover of the book. And you can find that on our website or on Amazon or whatever. And then if you're interested in becoming a renegade, head to renegade.global. You can click on membership. You can apply there. We help female leaders, executives, founders, and companies to really, really up-level their lives. We have curriculum, we have community, and we have accountability. And we've been doing this for quite some time. And we're industry agnostic, senior leaders really from all over the globe, but also every vertical and set of experience. And it's a pretty incredible crew, but also, the curriculum is everything I've learned in my career. And it's important, I believe, to unlock that genius, that talent, that secret sauce, that renegade, voice of authority, and your thought leadership to help the world, really, right? We need more individuals speaking up and sharing their thoughts, opinions, voices, and that in turn also ends up netting out with generating more income, investment. We have a strong financial side of this, opportunities there, and education, getting on boards, getting on stages, just making your impact. So that's it. And hopefully we stay in touch. Renegade rule number 1. Renegades identify the worst case scenario. Okay, what does that mean? So we go through a process to get there, right? First, renegades ask, what if this idea doesn't work? And then they answer the question. And they say, then what? And then they say, then what? Answer the question, then what? Then what? And what happens when we do that, when we green light the idea, right out of the gate, when we go from that to the worst case scenario, 2 things happen. Number 1, we realize it is going to take a lot longer than I thought to get to the worst case scenario. I'm going to have time to pivot, take out insurance, change course, stop, whatever it takes. Number 2, we realize immediately you're putting logic in the driver's seat versus fear, right? So you're operating from a pragmatic mind. So there was this moment where I thought, I do a lot of public speaking as my career now for 20 years now as a paid public speaker. And I've always, probably for 10 years thought, I wonder, maybe that's exaggeration, maybe 7 years. I've thought, I wonder if I could bring dance into my keynote talks, right? My solo keynote speeches. I wonder if I could bring, and then it was like, I wonder if I could do some tricks. So that question started to surface. Renegade rule number 1. What's the worst thing that can happen, right? You just don't. Potentially you could get hurt, but you would take your time. My thought was, I'll take my time, and I wouldn't do it unless I was really sure. And worst thing is I just have a new hobby or I've tried something. I won't try it on stage in front of thousands of people until I am pretty darn sure that I'm either going to land it or have a plan if I don't. So it was safe enough to try, right? So I did the Dancing with the Stars, and then I was like, okay, I really want to get after this. At the same time, I'm going through, this marriage conversion, relationship conversion, and all these other things. And it was like, do I have time for this right now? And the answer became, you don't have time to not do this right now. You need this in your life. The physical activity, the mental release, the joy, you can't afford not to do this, right? And I think about back to those moon towers, those guys playing baseball, right? They had so much play and joy. And I love to play. I'm a renegade. The last couple of years, I've definitely stacked my schedule, and not this last year, but we were kind of in this scale mode, and it can easily take you out of what got you there, right? Your operating system can easily change, and you're all of a sudden in a seat that you didn't necessarily intend to be in, but you need to make some shifts. And so right around this time, after doing the flips, and by the way, I did do the flip. We did a back flip, and we did this fly thing. And this is for the Dancing with the Stars. There's like 1,500 people in the audience. Worst thing that can happen, I'll tell you. Last minute, I decided it was 80s rock. It was AC/DC. You got to choose your own music. And I had this outfit on. It was all cool. And I had this long black ponytail that I decided, a couple weeks out, why don't we do that? That would look cool. Well, the ponytail got caught in the final flip in my partner's jacket in his button, and my head was stuck and literally couldn't get out. And we're like trying to end the scene or end the song, and there's all these people. And long story short, that was probably the worst case scenario. It wasn't that bad. The judges had us go out and do it again and show off the last trick, but that was right around the time when my friend, her husband, decided to write a book about these moon tower guys, and this is it. So she's like, Amy Jo, you've written a book. Would you mind just talking to my husband about this? And I was like, absolutely. And most people say they're going to write a book, but very few actually do. So what's the worst thing that can happen? He's an attorney, former sports journalist, and he had a manuscript, and he let me read it early. I loved it. This was a couple years ago. And I was like, whoa. I couldn't put it down. And he shares his story. And I just realized how important, how much of a pandemic of play we have in this world, and how many people need more of what it's called Shine the Light. By the way, his name is Jim Matthews. Amazing. Such a good gift. I mean, look at these guys. That's like, I don't know if you could see that very well, but we'll link to this in the show notes too. They're awesome, and they don't care. They're just out there to have a good time. But I was thinking about how, as I'm aging, we all are. It's life. Like, I have been talking about doing this, like dance and maybe acrobatics. I was like kind of one-upping myself for a long time. When you finally just get annoyed with yourself for saying it and embarrassed because you've said you want to or you're going to, and then you haven't. Well, finally one day I was like, I'm doing it. Why not? Renegade rule number 2 is renegades don't give themselves an out. So literally, this is how I operate, my life. This is in my DNA. And so renegades put a mechanism into place that holds them accountable. This is renegade rule number 2. Don't give yourself an out. And what this does is it creates instant momentum. You're getting a dopamine hit. It's the smallest but first best win you can get, right? And it's stepping across the starting line. First best brave step. And there's neuroscience behind all of these rules. This is part of what I teach. Manufacturing bravery is literally what I do. We're talking black diamonds, getting down the black diamonds. And so I'm like, why don't you start applying some of your own, things? And so I'm on a run one day, and I was like, that's it, I'm going to do it. So on social media, I shared, does anyone know any like acrobatics or gymnastics coaches in the Austin area? Not doing this virtual. And I was like, I want to do a flip. I know I could, and I want to dance. And I'm like, how do I integrate this into the content? I knew I would figure that out. Like, that's not the hard part. The hard part for me was committing to it and then going and doing it logistically, like finding the time. So I open source this outreach, and sure enough, all these tags and DMs start coming in, and people, you need to meet my friend, da 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 da. I was kind of overwhelmed, and I responded to a few, and then we tried to set up calls, and then again, it became kind of that like logistical, another thing to do. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was on it, but it also kind of felt like another thing. Well, then I'm sitting at a dinner one day. This was this February, 2024. And I had gotten this really big speaking engagement. It's kind of like the Super Bowl of speakers. This is a Super Bowl for speakers. It's called $1 Million Roundtable, and it's like 9,000 people. I mean, I think there are 80 some countries in attendance. It's incredible. So there's a lot of translating into different languages, and they are dialed, like super polished production and team and, operation going on here. And so it's in Vancouver in June. And they do a rehearsal in Chicago prior, which I had never traveled to a rehearsal before, months in advance. That's in a different city than where the actual event is, which was Vancouver. And I was like, okay. And so I'm there, and we're at dinner the night before the rehearsal, and I'm talking, and I always ask people, like, what's your why not now idea? What's going on? And so the clients, there were many. This is all committee driven. There's a committee and people from all over the world that flew in for these rehearsals too, because all the speakers were coming through. I mean, the operation and logistics of this is incredible. It's a class act team, you can imagine. So we're at dinner, and I asked them all their why not now ideas. They told me, in fact, one of us might be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro together because of this and this conversation. And then they said, what about you? And I said, I've been doing, some more dance. And I just did this Dancing with the Stars thing. It's like for a big charity. And they said, oh, really? And I showed them the flips. And I said, yeah, I'm starting to do more of this. And this is really when Renegade Rule number 2 came out. And that was when I said, yeah. And I was wondering, maybe we could integrate this into my performance for you. And they looked at me and they said, would you do that? What do you mean by flips? Like, do you really do this? And I showed them some of the footage. I was with a partner who helped me. It's much different doing flips when you're with someone than not. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, there's a Renegade dance. And they're like, will you show us tomorrow? I said, absolutely. Thinking to myself, I know I could pull this off. I said, it's very specific and allotted time. So I knew the amount of time I had, and I was ready from rehearsing for the rehearsal to go do that, but it didn't incorporate dance or flips. And so I said, it's not part of what I've been rehearsing, but I could show you right after. It'll take about 5 minutes. And they said, great. I said, good, because I travel with my little boom box. I've got this little red speaker thing, and I'll bring it with the music. And they said, great. So then I go back up to my hotel room and create a Renegade dance, right? So I could go show them. And when I'm saying rehearsals, it's like full on stage, audience of people sitting there. Like, it's not just like, yeah. So I bring my red speaker. Well, the night before I created the dance and rehearsed, sent it to my former pro dancer, who has been awesome because we've been kind of doing some lessons and stuff, and he and his now fiance, they may have gotten married. But he and Lisa have been awesome helping me. And I created a Renegade dance and showed them how I would integrate it into this keynote. Okay. I was like, well, we can't do the flips today, right? I'm in heels. I wasn't prepared. And well, yeah, because I need to go learn how to do the flips, right? I grew up doing gymnastics, as in like cartwheels and handstands. Never a front handspring, maybe a front walkover, back walkover, but like I wasn't a gymnast. I always wanted to be. I always wanted to be Mary Lou Retton, so the heat was on. They bought it. Okay, great. So you're going to show up in June in Vancouver, and you're going to do, flips. Each Renegade rule that I'm telling you now has some dance moves. There's a lot of all the content and all the neuroscience and all the examples of who I've worked with in the past and how they use these rules. And that edutainment is part of my keynote. Well, now dance and a trick is applied to each of these 5 rules. And at the end, the 9,000 people will stand up and do the dance with me, right? That's the plan that I put together in my hotel room in Chicago as I was making up this dance, the Renegade dance. So I thought, okay, get done with that meeting. I better find myself a flipping coach. Let's leverage adversity, which is Renegade rule number 3. Renegades leverage adversity. What does that mean? That means we're not talking like, let's make lemonade out of lemons. This is a springboard. Like, you got to use adversity. That's just asset in disguise, right? We need to leverage it and use it as momentum. And it's a launch pad. So for me, I've got X amount of days to learn how to do some flips and integrate this dance and these tricks by the minute, by the note, like cued to literally the musical note in each part of this keynote. So it was like, there's no sway here. You have an exact amount of time on this stage because it's 9,000 people and like they will kick you off. So I go back to those DMs and I find one, and there's this woman. She's a 6-time ninja warrior, and she's Miss Fitness. She's a 6-time ninja warrior and Miss Fitness 2016. And I think she's a 7-time ninja warrior, actually. I think I got that wrong. Her name's Angela. And I'm like, who's this woman? I go back to those old DMs and I DM her, and I was like, hey, voice note, it wasn't text. This is a scenario. It sounds like we have a friend in common. Looks like you live in Austin. Would you be willing to train me? Boom. Next thing I know, she's in my living room. I bought a 20-foot mat on Amazon, like gymnastics mat. And I was like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Want to help me? And she is a badass. So we'll make sure we link to her below too. And she showed up and game on. So we started training. Well, the exchange and kind of the way to actually do this was pretty organic in that she's also working on her public speaking career. And she's an incredible athlete, incredible coach, and has a lot going on as a business person too. And she really wants to ramp up her speaking. And I was like, awesome. I've been doing this. That's what we teach at Renegade and the accelerator. That's a portion of what all of the curriculum and focus is. And so I will help you on the business side of speaking as well as the performance side if you can teach me how to do some flips. And we're like, deal. And by the way, she's been on it, and you have to go check out her speaking reel too. Plugs to Angela for sure. So we start the first day. And Renegade rule number 4 is renegades are hyper aware of their mental, physical, and emotional state. Okay, so what does that mean? That means it's data. We can't control everything going on, but it is science and it's data. And it can help inform the next best brave step. That's all we got to do is listen. And as Bruce Lee always said, self-awareness leads to self-actualization. Okay, so that is a cue. When I started doing this, even back with Dancing with the Stars or starting to, like when I was at that dinner and I started to tell the clients of what we could do, I know when I'm onto something and when it's the right direction physiologically so much quicker than my mind knows, right? So, and emotions even, like my hands will get sweaty. I'll get goosebumps. Like my heart will start racing a little. And same with if it's the wrong direction too, and it's saying or it's saying yes. Like it's our internal compass, right? It's our GPS. It's very strategic. And so I'm pretty good at being able to listen to that. Yeah, so emotionally, what's the data? What's happening? Are you scared? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Just pay attention. What's the self-talk? So mental, physical, emotional awareness, we're hyper aware. What are you saying to yourself, right? When you're thinking about your why not now idea. So when I work this process and work the opportunity in front of a live audience, I'm asking them, I want you to create and have in mind a personal and professional why not now idea. And it could be anything, big, small, like just try both buckets and work these 5 Renegade rules against that idea. But I use this all day, every day without thinking, right? When Lincoln was born and I was by myself and I was at 27 weeks pregnant and getting ready to land on a layover in Denver, I ended up having him within like the hour, but I was using this operating system without even thinking about it because it's in my DNA and I've been using it for so long. And it quite possibly could have saved my life or his because I was able to focus on what I needed to focus on. But anyway, that's part of the keynote. But okay, so yeah, there have been steps along the way where I knew, like, you've got to keep going. This is scary. This is hard. This makes no sense. What are you doing spending all this time? Acrobatics really aim like you're going to do some flips in the middle of your business talk. They hired you for this. And I'm thinking, I know this. You know, the feedback loop has just always, people love the stories, the edutainment, the engagement. Like, our attention spans when we're in the audience listening to a speaker has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and harder to keep, you know, people's attention. So why not? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? So as I started training and integrating into this keynote these 5 Renegade rules and doing handstands and being able to hold the handstand for like a really long time and deliver a rule while I'm in a handstand, or talk about the Renegade rules and how they apply to AI right now in a handstand, like, that was just fun. I knew this is bizarre, this is random, it's very unexpected, but I love mixing shit that doesn't usually mix, especially for a reason, not just for the hell of it. Lots of cussing going on today. Okay, so that's Renegade rule number 4. And the first time I landed the front handspring without the mat and with Angela, my spot, oh, you can imagine, like, all of the mental, physical, emotional signs and cues going on. And I almost peed my pants too. It's too much information, but it's true. We have that on video. Not the pants peeing, but just the first time I landed it. The first time I even tried it on the mat by myself when Angela wasn't there. I knew these moments the first time I started really rehearsing it all together. And then the feedback loop and all, I had the signs. I knew along the way, right? And every step of this process, I'm still, you know, each micro moment, a micro step, right? You chunk everything down. If it feels too big and hard, it means you haven't been able to find the first smallest step yet, right? So the first step could have these 5 rules in it, right? Not just the whole process, but so all along the way, you know, Jim ends up writing his book, and this comes out this year. And I'm having all of these, you know, these incredible life changes, and I turn 45, and I'm in July, and I'm like, cool, I'm going to do some flips on stage right before I turn 45. Like, how fun. That's a fun goal. Well, Renegade rule number 5 is renegades have operating and belief systems that are in sync, right? What does that mean? That means an operating system is just like our OS in our devices. We need to update it and keep it, keep our features refreshed and keep that operating system updated. So do we in our lives, right? What does your sleep look like? How are you running your meetings? How are you operating and executing throughout your day? What's your morning routine? All those things. What's your protocol? And so that's your operating system, but it needs to be in sync with your bigger picture, right? Your belief system, the governing body of how you lead your life. And this could be your mission, your vision, your why. It could be a religion, something bigger than you, right? And you want to zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. Well, this is where it all started to kind of fall back into place in terms of, wow, this is very meta, but I'm applying my own why not now idea and these rules into this, my content, into a new version of this performance. And it started to really kind of shift me and my life. And it's back to the Venn diagram, purpose, passion, skill. And what I always say to renegades is, this is a moving target. This is life work. You don't just figure it out and you're like, I found it, bullseye, and you're done. No, it is daily work. It's going to shift. And that intersection is, as Dr. Gay Hendricks would say, it's your zone of genius, right? This is what you are uniquely qualified to do. That's where your capacity is. You're flying higher. That's unlimited potential. So I started to feel that, and I was like, this is why I'm here. And the spark started to come back, and the joy, and the trusting myself, and all the character flaws that have been shining so bright, especially going through this marriage conversion, relationship conversion, they started to feel less. I started to feel a little less sting there, and be able to just work on things more. So that really started to click, and man, you could look at every moment, but let's go through those 5 Renegade Rules again. So in the end, here I am in Vancouver getting ready to go out on stage, 9,000 people in the audience. And I look at how much, like, there's something that I think it was Kobe Bryant always said, of course nerves are good, but because he's trained so hard, he knows for the most part what to expect, at least out of himself, when he gets out onto the court, right, to perform. And so I look back, and of course there was more pressure during this process. Like, the preparation was intense because I did have to put a lot more time into this than I ever would. And my heart was in it, and it was both personal and of course professional. There were music clips in each of these moments, and then a dance at the end, and flips and handstands, and it's like, holy smokes, and visuals and cues that had to be perfectly timed. And I'm standing behind, backstage, ready to go on. And of course, I've got Renegade Rule number 4, hyper aware, mental, physical, emotional awareness. Yep, got it, calculating it. Tuning into that. And I was pretty darn calm, right? You need to hype yourself up because you need to make sure that you're going to deliver. But it was the keynote, I know, right? Worst case for me in that scenario was there was one trick that was the hardest, and I needed to land it. And I'd done it so many times that the worst case is I may not land it perfectly and land a little bit on my butt or a little just off, but I wasn't likely going to fall on my head or do very, very, very unlikely, unless something really radical shifted, which I could trip on the stage even if I wasn't doing a flipper trick. So I knew that worst case, if I fall, I'll integrate it. It's leveraging adversity. Renegade Rule number 3. I mean, they didn't hire me to do tricks and flips and things. They hired me for this content and the value of how it can transform lives and help you manufacture bravery at any given moment. So I had, worked all of these rules. And I think that what was really awesome about it is that I was able to work the rules to the rules that I created, to something that was new for me, very hard. It was play. It was in that intersection. And it took a lot of bravery because it just felt so random. Well, first of all, I got into great shape. I was shocked at what my body was capable of doing, and it became fun. And now I was like, was that a one-off? I wonder if I should keep doing this. And I show up to keynotes and they're like, are you going to do the tricks, right? Are you going to do the flips? And we're doing them more and more. And so this has become, I can't believe sometimes I get to live this life where you get to create what you want. And it feels so fluffy and so Pollyanna and like quotey and inspo-y, but it is so real. You really can create whatever you want, and it takes experimenting, but it takes a lot of bravery. And it's not just bravery to go do the thing, or, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be anything. But I think one of the biggest things is that relationship with your time and with your money. Because so many of us make decisions based around fear that we don't even realize. So we need to check ourselves. And even the best of the best, like I look at all of that time I've spent working closely with Dwayne Johnson and studying his operating system. I've never met someone that's worked harder at anything, a harder worker. Maybe Steve Nash. No, I'd say DJ even more. But he always says, same devil, new level, right? So even if you are damn good at brave, tackling things, getting the most out of life, risk, whatever, or, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, you can always level up. And this was a big level up for me because the trickle effect and the contagion to every other aspect of my life has been tangible. Like I can literally feel it and see how this has been a halo for a lot of things in my life. Okay, this was roundabouty to get here, right? I knew we would get here at the end, but roundabouty. But I wanted to share because I think a lot of people have seen me do these tricks and acrobatics and stuff, and they're like, I wonder what's the connection there, or what exactly? And yeah, so that's one of my why not nows. There's another big one. Well, obviously, there's been a few that I can dissect, but hopefully that helps you kind of think through. When we look at Renegade Rule number 5, for example, your operating and belief system that are in sync. That's toggling back and forth all throughout the day. Am I in integrity and in alignment from both my belief system and how I'm executing moment to moment? Integrity is a moment to moment decision. And that's a Dr. Gay Hendricks go-to quote too. But it's all about alignment. Can you stay in alignment, right? For me, I know I'm going to be high octane. That's just who I am. Like there is no changing that. I would not be myself. But can I be content and driven at the same time? Yeah. Can I, find the groove of life's balance? Yeah, it doesn't have to be so jolty. So yeah, that's my story. I hope that these Renegade Rules have helped you. Maybe there's something you've been thinking about doing. It could be anything. It could be big, small. I've seen it all. I've seen thousands and heard thousands of these ideas, and it never gets old because, it's just incredible to see what can happen because this is not a one-off. This is in your DNA. It's a daily practice, right? You can renegade the next hour, right? You can, why not now, change my state in the next hour and go through those 5 Renegade Rules. But I just wanted to share that with you. There's some updates, I guess you would say. So I'm going to be flipping. If you don't see me flipping, I know a lot of you have seen on social and stuff, then I'd love to hear from you and you can prod me a little bit. Be like, what's up? Step up your game. And we're working on some more tricks. And so trying to do at least handstands every day because it just gets my mind into a different place. Like just change your state physiologically. So much of the neuroscience of these 5 rules, which is a part of my keynote and will be in the next book, of course, which is why not now for next year to finish. It's almost done. They have helped me too because it's all connected. It makes so much sense. The more we understand how we're wired as humans, the more we can rewire, the easier we can rewire and self-actualize. So thank you for sticking with me. And if you want to hear more on the marriage conversion, let me know, the relationship conversion. I think there have been some key things that we've done that might be helpful, especially if you have children. And it might encourage us to do that sooner rather than later. But yeah, there we have it. And I'm going to sign off and thank you for being on this ride with me and listening. If you want to check out some episodes, the I'm a Mom one tells the story about Lincoln's arrival. Whew, that was a whole thing. And I know that's when a lot of you joined this journey. So if you haven't heard that story, feel free. And we'll see you next time. Bye.